Do you want to check out IT Pro TV but aren't ready to commit? We're making a few episodes from our most popular courses free for you to try here on YouTube so you can see what they're all about. Enjoy this episode and head over to ITPro.tv when you're ready to see the full course.
Hello and welcome to ITProTV's new Cisco CCNA show for exam 200-301. I'm Ronnie Wong, and we're going to talk about some of the different things that actually are going to help you as you actually get ready for the exam. Now, we'll be taking, of course, the perspective from taking a look at the exam objectives, and we'll ensure that we cover each and every one of those to give you a basic coverage of what needs to happen as you actually get ready and prepare. So that way you actually have not only the recordings that we'll be doing, but also, of course, hopefully you actually go through the labs, have hands-on experience that you need to be successful for the exam, and your own preparation as well. Now, for us to get started, let's take a look at what Cisco is actually going to be kind of describing where the focus of this exam is going to be. So on Cisco's website itself, you can go and simply, I would take your search engine and type in Cisco CCNA Certification and Training Program. And what we want to realize is when the exam goes live is actually a future date from today as of the recording of our show. So if we're not there yet, it means that we are taking the exam objectives and hopefully covering everything that we need to ensure that you actually get good coverage on the exam. But post that date, there is a possibility that, well, maybe I don't fill in all the gaps that I thought I filled in, but after that date, I will know. So there may be updates to this particular course as it goes on through, and you actually be live, and you actually see that go live as soon as those episodes are recorded. So I just want to make sure that I point that out because we're really guessing at this point since there is no experience with this new exam. Now, saying that, do I have confidence that they've actually put out the exam objectives at this point and that we'll cover them well? Absolutely. So don't be afraid to go ahead and take these exam objectives and run with them. Now, the new CCNA means that there's no longer a CCENT. There's no longer a second exam that you have to take for your CCNA. It is one big exam, and this covers the gamut from anywhere from a beginner and maybe even transitioning into the realm of actually a networking professional or someone that already has previous experience in doing so. Now, saying that, let me scroll down a little bit more. And there are no formal prerequisites for earning the CCNA, but I want you to notice what it also says here. CCNA candidates often have 1 or more years experience in implementing and administering Cisco solutions. So there is an assumption of knowledge that's already here, essentially the equivalent knowledge of the Cisco CCENT. Now, by saying that, I do want to point out that inside of the ITProTV library, if you are uncomfortable with any of the concepts that you actually see here, and we're probably taking this at a little bit more of a rapid pace than you might actually think that we should, check out the actual Cisco CCENT at this point. Make sure you go through that if you need to, and that will help build you up to speed for what we'll be covering here too, okay? So that will help you, and you might find it not only in our Cisco library, but you might find it later on inside of our legacy library where it might end up residing as well. So just realize that that's going to be a part of what you might have to do in terms of background knowledge to get you ready. The other thing, of course, is basic knowledge of IP addressing. So you should understand how to do that already. And we'll actually cover, once again, review of subnetting, what we'll actually see. And then, of course, a good understanding of network fundamentals. Now, having said that, we're not taking you from the very basics that you don't understand what everything is. We're actually saying, hey, at this point, you should be going ahead and saying, I already have a good, solid foundation and knowledge. So whether you learn that through the Cisco CCENT or maybe through the ITProTV's CompTIA Network Plus, all those are actually great materials to help you to get started in what you need to before you might come to this particular exam. So do not assume that just by taking what we're actually showing you here, that it's going to be enough if you don't have any previous experience. Make sure you understand that too. Now, for the exam, though, there's a couple of different things that we have to also remember, okay? Now, on the exam itself, you have to register through Pearson VUE, so make sure you check that out. Get registered for that exam, and the exam number, of course, is 200-301 for Cisco, and you actually register for that. We do not have a price for the new exam yet, so after February 20, whenever they actually open up the registration date for that, then you'll actually be able to do that as well and get registered to take that exam, and they'll tell you what the price is then. Show about 15 minutes before. Make sure they actually get everything they need to. They'll take a picture of you. They ask you for ID. Make sure you actually follow all those policies. They'll get you into the exam booth right away, and you'll be ready to take that exam as well. Now, what is it that we'll be covering in our show? Well, the great thing is you can download the exam objectives directly from Cisco itself. So if I right click on this and go to open the link here, it will bring me, of course, to the Cisco's Certified Network Associate. From there, you actually look at this button right here where it says Exam Topics. And when I select that, it'll bring you, of course, to the exam topics and a little bit of a collapsed field that you see here. But notice you can download the complete list of topics in PDF format. Now, I recommend that you do that. That way you can also follow that along, check it off, mark it out, whatever you need to as you go through the actual topics as well. So what are the topics that we'll be covering in our show? I've downloaded these so that you can see them too. So here it is. When we start taking a look, there's 6 different domain objectives that we'll be covering. We'll start off with networking fundamentals, so a good review of some of the fundamentals that you should know. But if any of this, like I said, seems challenging, make sure you go back and check out the CCNA episodes right here in at ITProTV. And so we'll actually be covering all those basics here, from the very fact of understanding roles and functions, as well as networking topologies, cabling and interface types. We'll be talking about some of the issues that can happen, collisions, errors, mismatch, duplexes, whatever we might have here. Also, know the difference between TCP and UDP. And probably the most scary topic in terms of the networking fundamentals is this one that I've just highlighted, which is subnetting, right? So we're not going to go through a super in-depth subnetting mini-series that we're going to have. We'll actually kind of take 2 or 3 episodes. We'll make sure that we cover the basics and understanding of it. But if you do need a more deeper dive, in other words, going all the way back to binary conversion, once again, the CCNA episode is the way to go, or the series right there too. We'll also, of course, take a look at IPv6 addresses and where IP addresses tend to appear in the operating systems of, in the operating systems as we access them. We'll talk about wireless principles and virtualization, and then we'll continue to move forward into the realm of network access. 20%, a whole fifth of the entire exam, is based on this section, and this is important because of the verbs that are used here, which is configure and verify. Configure and verify means hands-on. So if you're not doing this section any bit hands-on, and you think you're going to get ready for the exam, you're not. Make sure you take a look at that and do all the configurations that we're talking about and understand them as we move through. We'll also, of course, take a look at one of the harder concepts to be able to understand as well, which is the issuing and use of spanning tree protocol. We'll make sure we identify the components and understand how spanning tree protocol ends up working. Of course, we'll take some time in jumping into the realm of wireless architecture and Cisco wireless components too. Well, of course, we'll spend a bit of time in IP connectivity, that is layer 3 connectivity. We'll be talking mainly about the ideas of routing and how do we actually configure IP static routing, as well as using a routing protocol. And on this particular exam, they only focus in on OSPF, whereas originally or previous iterations of the exam, you would have covered RIP as well as EIGRP. All that's kind of moved into the realm of CCNP now. So just kind of realize that you're actually going to see that OSPF is going to be covered here too. And then, of course, IP services, the other additional services needed to run a network, besides the idea of layer 2 devices and layer 3 devices. What are some of those services? DHCP, DNS, NAT. All these are actually things that we'll be taking a look at and how we actually configure them and understand how they end up working. We'll be taking a look at some of the other things such as SNMP, syslogs that you actually see, as well as basics of QoS, understanding this terminology, per hop behavior for QoS, and what that actually means in terms of classification, marketing, and everything else that we see there. And then, of course, basics in network security. What are some of the fundamental concepts that you should be able to describe and talk about as you're a networking professional that should not throw you? So we'll go over those concepts as well, and we'll be configuring several different ways to do access control too. And probably one of the harder topics, once again, is this one. Configuring and verifying access control list is what we'll see, as well as the one that immediately follows that, which is going to be layer 2 security features. All those are actually going to be key as well. But we'll show you and make sure that you understand the basics of doing all that. Now, the new topic that is going to be covered for the CCNA, which has not really appeared in full-blown aspects of what we see, is, of course, network automation and programmability. So if there's anything that probably will be added upon after the February 24th date, if there's anything that's lacking as I take the exam as well, it's going to be probably this section, since we're not exactly sure how they're going to be asking some of these things. But notice they don't really deep dive into saying you're actually going to be doing or actually writing JSON encoded data. You're actually going to be figuring out how to write Python. You're not having to do that. A lot of this is, once again, the verbs, right? Explain, compare, describe. Compare these different devices here. Describe, recognize. So this is not a super hard section for us, but it is something that tends to scare us because these are concepts that networking professionals may have a little bit of experience in, may not have any experience in, so make sure you pay attention there too. So like I said, if it tends to be harder as we go to that point where we're ready to take the exam, well, I'll try and fill in the library if there's any gaps in there, to actually kind of do more than we need. But once you're done with that, that will actually be all 6 domain objectives, and you'll see those right here as we actually get ready to produce this entire show. But if you're ready to proceed on, make sure you click on the very next episode and ready to get started. Well, go ahead and we'll see you there.
Thank you for watching IT Pro TV.